Hey guys, Stan with L4C Multimedia. I trust you guys are doing excellent. Welcome to this series of color grading made easy beginner's guide. This is going to be the first episode, episode one, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Basically, what I'm doing with this series is I'm basically making the color grading process easy for beginners and for pros who have been struggling with their color grading workflow to just simplify the process and just have a more efficient way of color grading, whether you are using LUTs, whether you're not using LUTs. It's basically going to help everyone just to have a basic understanding and workflow so that you can be more efficient with your workflow when it comes to color grading. Okay, so a couple things to understand whenever you are color grading. The first thing you got to ask yourself is this: okay, what am I trying to achieve? Okay, are you trying to use some noise correction in your footage? Are you trying to use creative colors in your image? Are you just trying to just use your basic conversion LUT and just simply add a little contrast to it? You got to kind of have an understanding of all those little things because they go a long way. Okay, so in my workflow, okay, I always have to use noise reduction, especially when I'm taking shots of darker scenes or scenes where I have a lot of shadows or I have a lot of a lot of color. It's not the white balance is not basically it's not too balanced, and then there's some imbalance with the white balanced. So in that situation, what you need to do is you need to make sure that you have some kind of noise cancellation or noise reduction tool to help with that. So if you are using that, at what point in your color grading process are you going to use this plugin? That's the first thing you got to think about. Then now we got to think of it this way. We shot in a flat profile. We got to get the image back up to to a usable space, right? So we can work from there. Then you got to think about your conversion, okay? So whether you're using a conversion LUT, whether you're using whatever your editing software has to provide, whatever you may want to do, you are gonna need to find a way to convert your image or your video to a Rec 709 or whatever looks good to you. Okay, so it may not necessarily be that you use a conversion LUT, but you may need to make some tweaks just to get it where you need to get it to, and that kind of thing. Okay, so I don't want to make this lesson long. I'm going to make it very short. This is the introductory, so it's going to be a bit longer, but most times I'm going to keep it under 2 3 minutes or something like that, just to make it fun. Okay, maybe 5 minutes maximum. All right, so first things first. Okay, we to start the process, we got to understand there are multiple ways we can convert our image. So this is S-Log 3 that I've just basically just got a random stock footage online just to kind of do this. Okay, so once you right click on your video, you can go to modify, go to color, and once you go to override, you can at this point set it to Rec 709. I have set my editing software or Premiere to automatically always work in Rec 709 space, so it's always going to be there. But if it wasn't, you would come here and you would basically make the change. Okay, and there are other ways you can go about with picking other conversions based on what you shot in and that kind of thing. As you can tell, Fuji is there, Canon is there. So for example, Canon log, you have Canon log 3, cinema gamut. If you pick that profile and you shot in that, you'll be able to get a usable image and that kind of thing. Okay, so anyways, that's not how we're gonna go about with this. Okay, so that's the first way. So a couple of things to understand before you start color grading. Remember, I talked to you guys about your noise cancellation or your noise reduction. We are going to start with that first. And what I usually like to do is I like to apply it directly to the image before I do any form of color grading, because if you apply later, it's going to be a problem and there's going to be a lot of conflict. So first things first is I create a couple of adjustment layers and I'm going to duplicate them. Okay. I create a couple of adjustment layers. Then I basically just duplicate them. Okay. So about maybe 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. Okay. 5 adjustment layers. Okay. And I basically call my first, maybe let's say conversion layer 1. Let's just say layer 1 conversion. Okay, cool. Then I can call my next one layer 2. Okay, and we can do correction. Okay, then layer 3, I'm going to say unknown, and I'm going to tell you guys why I'm saying unknown later. I don't want to talk about it now. And I'm going to make more duplication. Okay, I'm going to duplicate a bit more. Okay, and I'm going to also call this layer 4. Okay, and you guys are going to understand all this later. Layer 4, and I'm going to call this correction. Okay, no. Let's say this will be creative. Okay, all right, creative. Yeah, that's fine. Creative, that's okay. And then I'm gonna do my final layer. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so layer 4. So actually, let me change this to layer 3 just to keep it simple. Unknown. I just wanted to look simple to follow. Okay, so layer 4 will be creative, and the final layer, layer 5, will be fades. Okay, cool. So you guys can see I created multiple adjustment layers. Okay, layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, and layer 5. Okay, all right. Here's the good thing. Once you get done with all your changes, you can simply save them as preset. Okay, by simply going to your Lumetri and just go to save preset, and you can basically have whatever name of the preset and just load them up. And then the cool thing about that is whenever you are ready to load them up, you can just go to your effects, go to Lumetri presets, and basically, no, not Lumetri preset, but just presets. And you guys can see I have L4C a whole bunch, right? And I could easily just load one there and it will be good to go. For example, you see I have L4C conversion to Rec 709. If I toss that on there, okay, immediately, boom, it gives me a startup image, okay, to work from, okay? But that's not what I'm gonna do. We are gonna go through the simple process that I want to explain to you guys. So just you guys should know that all this is gonna make a lot of sense as we go on. So stick with me because it's gonna be very helpful, okay? So now, enough with the rambling. Now the lesson is actually beginning, so you want to be paying attention from here on out. Okay, so the first thing is we prepared our project by creating the adjustment layers. Okay, so the next thing we can say to ourselves is, okay, we are ready to color grade, but we want to remove any noise in the image. Right now there's not a lot of noise, or at least visually I don't see any noise. Maybe there could be some noise somewhere around the trees, or maybe around the cloth of the subject, maybe, right? So I'm just gonna say I'll go to my effects, okay, and I'll simply bring up one of my noise reductions, okay, and that is by Neat Video, and I'm gonna drop it directly on here, okay, onto the clip, and I'm gonna prepare, and I'm gonna build, okay. Now I have you see there are some noises there that it sees it. Why am I doing it this way? I'm doing it this way because it's gonna get the most information versus when I do it once I have my colors applied. Okay, so maybe there's a lot of noise here, maybe there's some noise here, maybe there's some noise here, okay, but I can decide to pick my whatever section I feel like there's a lot of noise, and Neat Video will just do its magic, okay? But I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna do auto profile, and it's just gonna do its own thing. It's just gonna say use a small area. So yeah, we could. So you know, it's telling us there's some noise right here, okay? But we could even use the shirt right here, and we can just build, and boom, it gives us. And then you guys can tell, you guys can see how the before looks like. The moment I click the begin, boom, look at what it does, right? It just cleans it. You guys see what it's doing? It's basically cleaning it and making it look a lot more better. Okay, now you may not like the taste, so you may need to reduce the noise level a little bit so it's not overworking your footage, okay? All right, so however you want to do it, it's fine, okay? But anyways, that is how Neat Video works, okay? So just to give you guys an idea. All right, so after that you're done, you click apply. So now it has worked on the image, and how do we know that? Well, we can come in a little bit, and once we come in, we could take it off, and we see what it's doing right there. All right, okay, and it may look like we are losing some clarity, but we're going to make up for all those later, okay? But you guys can see what it's doing. So again, that's the first thing I would do, okay? So I know that's not really part of the color grading process, but it's important you remember this, because if you don't, later on you're going to apply later and it's going to be a problem, okay? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to basically take all these layers, okay, and we're going to basically drop them. No, not this way. We're going to drop the first layer, okay, and then we're going to drop the second layer. We're going to drop the third layer, okay, like so. We're going to drop the fourth layer, and we are going to drop the final fifth layer, okay, cool. Now we can select all of them, okay. If you can't see it, you can make it smaller, okay. Select all of them. Come on. All right, select all of them and just drag it to the edge and end of the clip. Okay, so it goes from beginning to end of the clip. Okay, got it. Now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna eye all the top layers, so it's left with the bottom layer. So that's all we are doing here. Okay, so at this point, I hope you are following. Okay, I know it's gonna be long with the first one, but trust me, the next ones are gonna be very quick. All right, so now I have all these layers, okay? And again, the layer 1 is doing my conversion, layer 2 is doing my correction, layer 3 I'm gonna tell you guys, layer 4 we are doing our creative, and then layer 5 we are doing our fades, okay? All right, let's take a quick look at a clip from beginning to end, how it looks right now. Okay, so if it's breaking up like this, you may need to reduce your speed to half or whatever else to see what it's going to do, because right now I have Neat Video and it works very hard. So you may need to go to half or even 1/8 or 1/4, whatever will give you a better playback. Then once you're done, set it back to full. Okay, so 1/2 seems to be fine right now. So you guys see the clip. Cool. All right, so now we got to talk about our lumetric scopes too. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about all these graphs because at this point, if you're color grading, you probably know about all of them. This is what I like to use. Okay, this is my setup. I don't have time to go through all of it, but I'm using a vector scope. I'm using the parade and I'm using the waveform. Okay, and those are the only three that I use. Okay. Of course, you can use a histogram, but I think that's more useful when you actually shooting the video. But sure. And I'm going to explain to you briefly what I'm trying to achieve with all these reads, okay? So I guess the waveform could be seen kind of like a histogram, right? You know, but it has a blend of all the colors that are in the image. And same here, we can, you know, as far as what I'm using this graph to do, I'm gonna make sure that the highlights are not clipping, all right, and not clipping at the 100, and then also the shadows and the dark sections of the video are not also clipping the 0. Okay, and that's all I'm trying to achieve with that. And also when it comes to this diagram here, my goal is to make sure that I'm basically staying close to staying close to balanced, so that's even colors, and at the same time, if there was a skin tone involved, I want to make sure that that skin tone is falling right on this line. Okay, I'm going to be very honest with you guys. I don't get into all this because it starts sounding complicated. So the one thing you guys are going to love about the way I'm going to go about with this process is I'm not going to talk much about the graphs. However, I'm always going to have it there as reference. I'm going to use my eyes more, but I'm going to also depend to use the graph as reference to see how bad I'm pushing it or how well I'm doing. Okay, so you will hear me not talk a lot about the graphs. Once in a while I may talk about it, but most times I'm going to be focusing on the actual video or image that we are working on. Okay, all right, cool. So let's start with the layer 1. We're going to start with our basic conversion. Okay, and all we're going to do is we're going to bring the lumetric color up. And one thing I'm going to tell you guys, okay, when it comes to our conversion and our correction, we are going to basically bring them all up from basic correction. We don't want to do it from creative. All right, and you guys are going to understand as we go through. And then when it comes to our creative, that's where we are going to actually use creative. So I would advise you, don't use your correction and your conversion at the creative. I used to do that, but I had to learn my way through. Okay, so the first 2 layers we are using basic correction for, and then the creative we're going to use creative for. Okay, alrighty. So for the conversion LUT, we're going to come to basic. Okay, and once we come to basic, we are basically going to go through and pick whatever is our conversion LUT. Okay, in this instance, if you knew you shot in Canon, C-Log, or whatever it was, and maybe Cinema Gamut, okay. I used to use the R6, but I sold it for Sony. This would be what I would use in this instance if I was using C-Log footage. In this case, this is a stock S-Log, and I don't even know if it's really that, but hey, let's work with it. All right, so we browsing and we are going into, let me see if there's a simple way to get there. Okay, cool. So okay, so I need a fast way to get there. Okay, that's fine. I'll just have to go through my video then custom LUTs. Okay, cool. So I use buttery LUTs and I use phantom LUTs. Okay, those work for me great. Okay, so basically, I see that buttery LUTs work well for my first um, two steps. Okay, it does well for me. So in this case, let's just pretend we shot on FX3 and we wanted to convert to Rec 709. So I'll use the 709 preset version 2 without any contrast. Okay, so I just want it as flat as possible, or minus the contrast to get even more flatter. Okay, so in this case, it looks like this. Now, if that's a little too strong for you, you could go for the minuses and maybe go for a -2, okay, which will look something like that. And that looks good, right? If we take it off, boom. All right, so maybe let's start with the -2, or maybe even the -1, maybe the -1. Yeah, the -1 is not bad either, okay? All right, so but we can tell that our we are clipping at the top end, right? We can tell from that, right? But that will all be worked on. So let's do -2. Cool. So -2 look a little bit better, right? We're not clipping as much. Okay, cool. And that is a good starting point for us. Okay, if we want to go with this conversion LUT. Okay. Now you might be asking yourself, okay, what if I don't want to use LUTs? How would I go about with this? Okay, I'm going to teach you how I like to do it in a very simple way. So with a conversion LUT, whether you use Phantom LUTs or you use whatever LUT preset you want to use, it doesn't matter. It's all gonna get the job done. Okay, so let me give you guys an example, right? So I have a Sony preset. Let me go to my downloads, go to Sony LUTs, and I have a Sony. Let me see, where is that at? Yeah, yep. So Sony, and I have the Cine 709. Okay, and boom, it still gets the job done. Of course, it makes it brighter because it's boosting a lot of the of the highlights and exposure. Okay, and it's very blown out, but we have other options that we could use, like the LC version. Okay, which will probably still look good, right? It looks decent. All right, so there are all kinds of ways we can go about with this. Your conversion LUT is just kind of restoring the image, bringing it to what looks good to the eyesight versus a flat image that looks just like that. Okay, cool. So that's all we're gonna do with a conversion LUT. Do not touch anything else. Okay, don't touch anything else. You are simply converting. Don't touch anything else. Then at that point, we are gonna eye the layer 2, and we are gonna get on the layer 2. Then at that point, we are going to now come into the basic correction, and we are not going to apply any LUT with our correction. This is where we are going to fix how our image looks like. Now we are actually going to get to work. Looking at this image, we went from here to here. And it looks good to me, so I'm not gonna worry about pushing it too much. Okay, so some of the simple concepts that we want to use, we want to first off pick our white balance. Okay, and the cloud is a good place to pick our white balance. Boom, we got our white balance done. Okay, now do we feel like we need a lot more of the low ends? Sure. All right, so we can maybe say, hey, let's darken it a little bit more. Okay. All right, but there's not a lot of dark parts in the image, so be careful with it. All right, I'll say -50 for this image is good for me. Okay. All right. And -50. All right. And we can bring down our shadows. Okay. We can bring down our shadows. Okay. All right, I'm gonna do -70 just to give it a little bit of breathing room. And then our highlights, we can bring that down too. Okay. You don't want it to be too dark. So I'll say something like a -60. All I'm doing at this point is I'm using my eyes, right? I'm not really doing much. So you guys can see so far, we went from a flat profile to a corrected, to a conversion, to a converted image to a corrected image. Okay, and that's all we are doing. We're using our eyes, and at the same time, I'm using this graph just to make sure I'm not clipping. It's not staying very flat up top, flat like that. I'm just trying to keep it balanced. Okay, cool. So make some adjustments there. Now, if I want to add some contrast here, I could if I needed to. So let's just say I want to do a 40 for the contrast, or even you may even need to take out contrast depending on what you're grading and what you may need to do. Okay, so let's say -60 is gonna look like that. Okay, so every image is gonna look different. So you guys can see when I went -60, you guys can see it brought out the building there. If we went to 40, it's kind of hard to see it there, right? So that's kind of cool that it's able to show us that. So that tells us that there are some, there are some, I guess, details that we could have potentially lost. So let's go to our maybe -30. Okay, yeah, that brings it out a little bit. Okay, or -40. Okay, cool. Yep, that brings it out a little bit. Okay, and you guys can tell the difference it makes. It brings out that that building, whatever that tower is. Okay, cool. And so what does that tell you? That tells you that you do not always have to keep boosting colors, right? We are trying to make moderate adjustments to end up somewhere. Okay, so we're gonna do a -40. Okay, and so far it's looking good, and I don't think we want to boost much of the whites due to it clipping, but yes, so ideally we could, I wouldn't advise that for this image. We could try and increase the exposure by 1 just to see. Nope, it gets blown out. Okay, sometimes I do 0.3 or 0.5. Okay, it all depends on what I'm doing. Okay, so 0.3 or 0.5 sometimes. This is a 0.2. Nope, I think I like it. I like it this way. I like it this way. Yep. And let's see if we can bring the highlights back a little bit. Okay. So the highlights is -60. Let's do a -50. Okay, not too bad. Let's do a -40. Cool. I'm gonna keep the highlights at -40. Okay, cool. So far, this is what we have. Okay. In case you are following, flat image, converted image, corrected image. Okay, and that's what we have so far. So at this point, we are working with every adjustment we need to make to get where we want to get to. Okay, so that's all we're going to do for the basic correction, something like that. Of course, if you need to change the color temperature a little bit, you want to make it more warmer, this will be the chance for you to do all that. I'm not concerned about that for this image. I did my white balance, I'm good to go. Okay, so now from basic correction, okay, remember creative is only going to be for the creative section, so I don't want to mess with creative yet. However, you could still work with it if you needed to. I'm not going to do that for this edit. Okay, I'm going to go to curves. All right, now most of us know the infamous S curve. I'm going to tell you guys, you don't always need to worry about that, but in some cases you may want to you may want to work with it. In this case, I don't have much shadow detail that is at a level that I want, so I could Bring down a little bit. You guys see what it's doing? Without width, okay? So just bring that a little bit. And then maybe my highlights, we can try and bring that a little bit. Okay, and my mids. Okay, not much to my mids. Okay, cool. And of course you could work on different levels that you want to work on. So for example, if I wanted to boost, the blue shirt, of course there's ways you could go about with this, but you could draw another S curve and then deal with that, or simply give it a small little boost. Be careful with it, okay? Be careful with it. All right, maybe is the top end you are trying to deal with, okay? Then you kind of just deal with it like that, like so. Okay. All right. You just gotta really understand what you're trying to shoot for. Okay. Right now, that's not what I'm shooting for. Okay. So I'm gonna keep it simple. All right. So we get an S curve. So then we can talk about our hues. Okay. So for our hue versus saturation. Okay. We can decide to sample this color here, and we can give it a little bit life. Okay, a little bit life. Okay, so moderate changes. Okay, and you probably are not seeing it well, but look in here. If I uncheck it, you guys see what it's doing. All right, so it's kind of adding some color to it. Okay, all right, it's adding some more life to it. Cool. Then our greens, it has a lot of greens. We could get in there like that. Some greens and yellows, so get there. And then we could kind of lift those up a little bit more towards green. Be careful with it so you don't overdo. All right, cool. And then of course, we can work on our blue sky. Okay. All right, it's not much, but it's gonna make sense later. So yep. So you guys can see what we've got so far. Okay. So without these color adjustments, it looks like this. With it, it looks like this. Okay, cool. And we probably could get deeper and get some pinks too. Okay. Well. Okay. Let me sample off here. Okay. Yeah, I like this more. So more towards the pink. Okay. And yep. You guys see that? Cool. All right. And you guys see that? All right. If I don't make that adjustment, it looks more flatter. Okay. But we could add a little bit of life to it. Okay. All right. Good. Good. So that's all we've done, right? So we've got a couple things boosted up, and we have some colors where we want it to be. All right. We have the sky blue, her shirt blue. Okay. We got some hue versus saturation going. Then hue versus hue is basically you saying if you want to change the color of something. So let me give you an example. So let's just say the color of her shirt. I don't like it. I want to shift it to a different color. I select it. I start shifting it. Okay, and it starts giving me different options. of where it can go to. Why is the sky changing? Because the sky is also blue and is boosted, okay? So it's affecting it also, okay? But that's not what we want to do, okay? We like this, so we don't need to worry about hue versus hue. So in this case, don't worry about hue versus hue, okay? So then we can work on other things if we need to, like hue versus saturation, or saturation versus saturation. Luma versus saturation, or saturation versus saturation. So let's just say, for example, we had some very white background, or we really needed help with white. We could simply select that top end, and we can simply boost it, and we are gonna get and we can boost it and just kind of give it a nice lift, okay? But I'm not trying to achieve that. I don't need to worry about that with this image, okay? All right, or this video. Cool. So now that we have the curves, we've gone through everything, and yep, we've gone through every part of the curves. Okay, so the next thing we would work on is the color wheels. Okay, so with the color wheels, if you like the image as is, I'd advise you not to mess with it. We don't have much skin tone to deal with, so I don't know why I would want to do anything about it. But let me explain it to you in a nutshell, okay? So shadows would be stuff like this, okay? Stuff like this, stuff like this. Maybe here a little bit, maybe here a little bit. All those are considered to be shadows. So when you lift any type of color, you are kind of affecting those areas. And then the mountains has some form of shadows in there too, okay? And of course, your midtones will kind of be like your neutral zones or your main central points, okay? These all could be considered midtones, okay? All those can be considered midtones. And then, of course, your highlights will be like these areas, okay? So you want to be careful when you are dealing with color wheels, especially when you have your image at a level that you're satisfied with, okay? So simply maybe your shadows, let's just say you wanted to get them um, more toward a yellow feel, okay? Then you can simply do that like so. And let's just say if your midtones, you wanted to get them more towards a red feel, you can simply do that like so. Okay, it all depends on what feel you are going for. Keep that in mind, okay? So again, you are the color corrector, you are the one doing the work. What are you trying to go for? And then of course your highlights, are you trying to shift it more towards this blue? Okay, and then boom, do you like what you see? Then you give yourself that answer. Okay, without me doing the color wheel, this is what we look like. With me doing the color wheel, this is what we look like. And you got to tell yourself, does that look good to you, or is that what you're going for? All right, for the sake of just having fun, let's just say that's what I want, and I'm just going to reduce the levels a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to reduce the levels a little bit. Okay, for this, just for fun. Okay, cool. And let's just say I'm okay with this. Not that I am, because I kind of like this feel, but let's just say I'm okay with it. And then maybe let's bring this kind of back a little bit more, because we have a lot more green going on. Okay, cool. Okay, all right, cool. So let's just say I'm okay with this, and that's the feel that I want. Then the next thing would have been my HSL. All right, my HSL, there's not a lot of skin tone in here, so I don't really want to worry about it. But let's just say if I had the skin of the subject, okay, like right there, okay, I could simply say I want to come into a skin, okay, and at that point I'll say, okay, what I guess what color does her skin lean more towards, right? Is it more towards red, more towards yellow, more towards what? And I think for a skin like this, it leans more towards the yellow. Okay, so you could do that and simply click on the color gray and just kind of adjust these till you get a skin to be selected a little bit. I struggle with this a lot, so you got to really take time with this to get it to perfection. Okay, yeah, to get it's very hard to get it perfect, but I'm sure with practice you'll get it. Okay, and this is very important because you don't want it to select other areas it shouldn't. Okay. Okay. So, all right, cool. Um, the thing is, if I try and get this, it's gonna take me a while. So I'm just gonna be a little random here. So let's just say I like what I see, but that's not what I want. You gotta really adjust it so that it select just this portion to the best of your ability without all this, because anything you do is gonna affect all these. Okay, and that's not what you want ideally want. Okay, so let me just try and get a lot of those covered. Um, yeah. Yeah, let me just say. All right, so let's just say that's what you wanted. Okay, so then at this point, you would simply come into the refine. All right, and then for the blur. Okay, so I have some guideline that I like to use. Okay, I could um, let's see. I have a guideline that I like to use, and I can show you guys real quick. Okay, so basically, when it comes to your okay, let me see. All right. So when it comes to your skin tone, okay, you can decide to use the blur, okay. So for the blur, you can blur it a little bit to maybe like a 40. Um, no, so something like a 3. That's a little too much. Let's do a 1. Yeah, see this pic in this image, it's not a lot of detail. Okay, so I mean, as far as her face goes. Okay, so let's do a 1. Okay, all right, cool. And when it comes to the noise, let me explain to you guys. You see, as you shift up, it kind of adds some, I guess, some hardening to the skin. Okay, and as it stays low, it kind of you know um, makes it a bit more smoother. So just be careful how you go about with that. Okay, all right. So if you want to add some denoise, you can feel free to do that. But for me, mainly the blur is good for me. I'm gonna just do a 2 to kind of add more blur. Okay, then you're gonna say, okay, what does the skin really look like? Okay, you can decide to stay in here, or you can decide to just kind of have that color wheel. And that's kind of why I said I don't like to use the color wheel earlier in the other image, because I like to use it specifically for the skin and specific aspects of the image that I'm color grading. Okay, so here we can decide, okay, the mid-tone and the shadows. Maybe the shadows, right? The shadows look a little too dark, so maybe let's give it a little life by increasing it a little, not too much. Okay, cool. And let's say we think her skin goes more towards orange. Okay, orange, red, something like that. So we're gonna get it there, let's just say. And maybe the mid-tone. Uh, we feel like that goes into the red also a little bit. And maybe we need to increase that as well. Okay, you guys see what is happening to her skin? Okay, and then maybe the highlights, which might be the lighter parts of her face, we can leave as is, or we can say, hey, we want to kind of bring that down a little bit to make more cooler. Boom. And then we can decide, okay, we want that to be a bit more toned down, or we want to add a bit more life to it, okay, or leave it untouched. Okay, up to us. But I think we can lift it a little bit. A little bit. Okay, cool. So now let's see what we have. So with the adjustment, okay. So without the HSL, we have this. And with the HSL, we have this. Okay, so you see our skin. So with, without, and without. And again, we might think it's a little too yellow. This is when we can go back and make the right adjustments, okay? So let's just say right here, we can dial back a little bit and then check again. So you guys remember why I said you gotta have that selected? It's affecting her hair and everything, okay? So that's what I mean by that. So you need to really get it to select that specific area so you can really work on it because it's affecting her hair, okay? So for the purpose of not dealing with that situation, we can just reset it, but you guys kind of have an idea what we're trying to do here, okay? So I'm just gonna kind of do a simple way of getting this done. Let me see if red gets me a better results, even though that's not what I want. Okay, let me see. Okay, all right. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so this is one of the things I really struggle with because getting it to perfection is a pain. It's a pain. All right, so let's just pretend that all is good, okay? All right, so again, let's just say those colors were lifted a little bit. All right, we're just gonna lift them a little bit. All right. All right, so it's not the best, but I just want you guys to understand what we're trying to do there, okay? And again, it's still gonna bleed here, okay? But at least you guys get the idea, okay? All right. So it's not the best because we only got this section. We're supposed to get this part too, okay? It's not the best, but at least it helps you guys get a feel for it, okay? Cool. So let's just say we like that. And you guys can tell her face right from there. And then without, without. All right. Cool. So it affects other parts of the image, but it's not the huge deal for this, okay? So you guys get the idea there. So basically, once you're done with that, then you can decide, hey, it's a little too strong, blah, blah, blah. Okay, my saturation, it's a little too strong. I can dial back by 80. Okay, boom. You see 80 makes it a bit more flat, which is fine, right? Because that's all we're trying to accomplish. We don't want to boost it and make it too much worse. Then remember we dialed back the contrast earlier. We can decide, hey, this would be a good time we add a little bit of contrast. Maybe let's go up 30. Oh, 30 is not enough. Let's go up maybe 60. Okay, and 60 gets us. But again, let me tell you guys what you're affecting, by the way. I didn't point this out. So you're really affecting the face. Okay, so by you saying you added more contrast, okay, that's what you're really affecting. You guys see that? Okay, so you're not really affecting much. But let's just say if you needed to add, we dialed the saturation back. So let's put at 100 so you can see it. 100, you guys see that? So we go to 80, boom, it makes it a bit more natural. All right, then we can say, hey, we want a little bit of contrast, maybe 20. Okay, maybe more, maybe 40. Okay, maybe we're cool with that. All right, and that is that, and we're good with there. And of course, if you want vignetting, you can use I don't need it for this. Okay, cool. And at this point, we have our correction. So you guys can see we went from a flat video to a corrected flat video to a converted video, okay, to a corrected video. So converted, corrected. All right, so then you guys will see, okay, are we done yet? Or is this good enough? Are we done yet? Well, this is where you got to tell yourself, is this good for the taste you are going for, or you want to do more with it? Okay, so this is where creative comes in. So if you are color grading and you do your converted lot and you do your correction and it looks good to you, your job is done. But if you're telling yourself, if you're telling yourself, I want to kind of create a more artistic feel to it, okay, then you could do a creative LUT, and that's when you'll be able to come into your creative and add whatever LUT you want. This is the point where it really doesn't matter any of the other LUTs you put on there, as long as it's not a conversion LUT. So for example, if you do a broadcast safe, it's kind of going to give you the same image you have, but it's going to kind of soften it for broadcast. You guys see that? It just softens it for broadcast, okay? And makes it broadcast ready or whatever. All right, so whatever you want, okay? So in this case, let's say I have been working with I've been working with the buttery LUTs. So let's just say if I wanted a creative LUT from buttery, I can decide, okay, I want to go for the same type of feel that I had, but with more contrast or whatever, okay? And I could do that. So let's just say, for example, I want that same feel with a contrast of 2, with a contrast of +2. Boom. It gives me a lot of image. And you guys will tell yourself, man, my LUTs are not good, blah, 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 blah. It looks so bright, it never looks good, it blows up, you know. Well, the purpose of you using a LUT is not to say you are getting stuck with that, okay? You have to be willing to work with it and pull certain colors you want, okay? So this is a creative LUT that we are trying to add to get a feel. So I will say always start from 50% and work your way back, or start from somewhere like 20% or maybe even 10% and kind of work your way up, however you like to work. So for me, I like to kind of dial it back to 50% just to see how it look at halftone. Okay, then I say, okay, well, that looks good. Let me go to 30%. 30%. I'm like, okay, that looks cool. Then I'm like, okay, let me go to 10%. What does it give me? Okay, 10% looks good. I'm like, okay, well, let me take it off. Let me see the difference. What did it change? How did we get to this point? Okay, so it's adding a little bit more, but it's not too strong. Maybe I could do 20 without a creative LUT. With a creative LUT. Okay, that looks good. Okay, and I can say, okay, I like this or I don't like it. Okay, so for the sake of us getting the right LUT on, I'm going to set it to 40%. Okay, and we can work our way up. And all we're going to do is once we find the creative look we want, we can at that point say we're going to stay within somewhere like 20% to 40%. Okay, so we can go back and we can say, okay, maybe for example, I want the new look, the new look 3. Boom, that tones it down a little bit without a lot of highlight or whatever. Okay, and that can probably go up to 60% and it still look good. Okay, and you guys see that I added a creative LUT to it. Without a creative LUT, it looks like that, nice, evenly colored. With a creative LUT, it looks like that. Of course, there's some highlights here. This is not a point where you want to be adjusting highlight. Okay, so if you decide to use this, you got to go back to your correction LUT and you got to go and do all those highlight stuff over there. Okay, so for example, you want to take away some of the highlights in this section. Well, this is the point where you need to dial back a lot more, okay, to kind of get some of those out. Okay, but again, you don't want to do that at this stage because then you will be, it has to be very moderate changes, okay, or else you're going to be destroying your image. Okay, so let's say if I like that, I'll stick with that. Okay, and that will be what I'll have to work with. Okay, or let's say I want to go for look 4. Okay, and that looks good too. Or I want to give it a film look. That looks nice. Okay, let's go for look 3. Film look 3. Okay, cool. And all looks good. Okay, so remember I talked to you guys about phantom LUTs, okay? And then let's just say you were somebody who purchased phantom LUTs and you're like, well, I thought phantom LUTs would get it done for me, but it's not really getting it done for me, right? So this is where you can be like, okay, let me explore, okay? So let's just say with phantom LUTs, I find some of these to be fine. So let's say the Utopia. Always you can do the 65 space instead of the legacy, okay? So phantom LUTs also gives us this type of look, okay? So you are trying to give it an artistic look if that's what you're shooting for, okay? So look at what we have right here without a creative LUT and with the phantom LUT. So with the phantom LUT at 100%, it's gonna look more towards the reddish, okay? So now we can decide, we can dial it back to 30% or maybe even 20%. Okay, and let's see the difference. Okay, maybe let's go 40. Cool. And then let's just say we are cool with that, and that will kind of give us the feel we want. Or we can say we want something like the Utopia, Tangent, Jamaica, neutral. Yeah, we can go for the neutral feel. And boom, that kind of gives us, you know, a balanced look, okay? And you guys are not seeing much of it because I'm sticking to the 40%. If I boost it, you guys will, you know, and this is why I like working this way. It keeps it simple, right? I've figured out the threshold I want to be. Now I'm just trying to find the look that gives me that. So this is what I meant by the icing on the cake, okay? So you're just trying to find the look that adds the icing onto the cake, whatever. Okay, cool. And if you want to boost this a little bit more, you can go to maybe a 60%. Okay. All right. I don't want to use this. And then the last thing I'll talk to you guys about with your options, when you go to Sony's website, they have some third-party LUTs that you can use. So you have the Bueno. If you use that workflow, at this point, it doesn't matter. You could use them and explore with them. Okay, it doesn't matter if you don't use those cameras, okay, or those profiles that use those. So you guys see that? It added a nice feel to it. I can go up a little bit more. or I can decide, hey, that's a little too much. Let me dial back to 20%, okay, or even 30% or 25%, okay. And you guys see, without a creative adjustment, with a creative adjustment, without width, okay. And then if you like it, you just keep it. So that's all you're trying to do. Let's do the teal and orange here. Okay. All right. And we can decide to do 40%. Okay. And that gets us somewhere. All right. So with all this, you guys get the idea. Okay. You have options. You are not just limited. You guys can see I'm just using all kinds of approaches, and I'm still getting the same similar results. Okay, and some third-party LUTs on Sony's website you can use. There is the sign color. Okay, Cine color. Okay, so you guys see what the Cine color did? Very nice, and I think we're probably gonna stick with this. I think I like it. Okay, so the Cine color, very nice. 40% looks good. Let's go to 60. Let's see how it gives us. Okay, 60 looks good. It's not boosting too much of the highlights. Okay, we can go to maybe a 30%. Okay, without width, without width. Okay, so let's stick to the 40. Boom, and we have our look. Okay, so you guys see this? So now, the question here is, what is this unknown layer that I have, right? This is where we can do our sharpening. And then you guys are gonna say, why did I put at a layer 3? Well, okay, let's do it this way so it doesn't confuse anyone. All right, so layer 3 will be our sharpening, okay? And you want to do that before your creative LUT, okay? You don't want to do it as your final thing because you're gonna lose some detail, okay? So let's go to the section where the subject turns a little bit, okay? And all we're trying to do is we want to zoom in as much as we can. Usually 100 should do, but I don't really care about that now. Okay, so the way you can do this is you would go to your effects. Okay, go ahead and select first your sharp, and then go ahead and drop on the sharpen, and then on sharp max. Okay, now what you're gonna do is you're going to deselect the sharpen, and you're gonna work with the unsharpen mask. Okay, all right, cool. And all you're gonna do here is you have amount, you have radius, and you have threshold. Okay, so the amount, all we're gonna do is we're gonna shoot for something within 80 to somewhere about 250. Okay, so in this case we can start with 80. Okay, we can tell what it's doing here. Okay, so let's see, 100. Okay, you guys see what is it did to the skin? Okay, so you have to find a good medium. Okay, so let's just say for example I did 300. You guys see what 300 is doing, right? So you don't want to overdo. So let's do 80. Let's do 100. 80. 70. Okay, let's do 120. Let's do 200. Okay, 200. Okay, gets into the hair. So 150. 100. Okay, so for this we're gonna stick with 100. Okay, all right, and that's where we want to be at. And then for the radius, we want to stay within 1 to 5. We don't want to go any more than that. Okay, you can just use the slider to work on it. okay? Or you can just dial it in. So let's start with let's start with 3. Okay, so you guys saw what 3 did, right? And let's go to 5, and we see what 5 is doing. So let's do 1. So the closer we get to 0, the better. Okay, so we can do a 0.5 or a 1. Let's see, or a 2. Okay. All right, for that we're gonna stick with 1. And for the threshold, we keep it at 0. We never change, okay? We never change, okay? The whole idea is if you select it to 1, it has 2 settings, all right? It's at 0 or 1, okay? And all that means is if you select it to 1, it's basically going to sharpen everything within your image, not just an area that you're focusing on. So keep it at 0 and keep it simple. Okay, cool. So you guys see I did moderate changes here. So then why did I add sharpen? Because I'm going to use that as my final icing on the cake when it comes to sharpening. And what I'm rather going to do is, instead of me dialing a big number, so let's just say for example 200, and boom, making it all look bad, or let's just say maybe even 90, that still looks bad, right? We are simply going to say, hey, we want to start with numbers from 10 to 20, or maybe even 5. Okay, so 5, 10, okay, 20. Okay, so 20 gets a little bit out of range. Okay, so let's go to 15. Okay, and let's do 10. Okay, cool. So we're gonna stick with 10, and then that gets us where we want. So so that's what we've done with sharpening. All right, and we can see that now. Of course, there is some color. There's a color corrections that you can do to the you can apply to the sky and all that, but keep in mind it's likely from your creative LUT look. Okay, so you got to really pick LUTs or make adjustments that really favors you. Okay, so with the sharpening we have that. Okay, and I think this looks good. This looks good. All right, so from beginning to end we have very nice. All right, so let's see. So we started with a flat image. We used our conversion LUT to convert it to add a little bit life to it. Okay, then we did some correction to get it corrected to where we want it to be at. Then we did some creative editing to add some creative feel to it. Okay, then once we got a creative look to it, we did some sharpening. Okay, and now we had it sharpened. So now the final thing that we would do is, let's just say we needed to do some fades. Then we want the fades to be the last thing on the timeline, so all the color grading fade nicely. And I'm going to show you guys. Okay, so let's just say for example I did a fade here. You guys see how it's going to fade out? Boom, it was very nice. It wasn't bad, right? You guys see that? Okay, you guys see how nice it faded out? So if I didn't do that, I'm going to show you guys the bad way. If I didn't do that and I said I'm going to do it to the clip, or I'm going to do it somewhere else or whatever, watch what happens. You guys saw that? It kind of gives you this negative look, You guys see that? That negative look? Okay, so this is why I took time to prepare the project in the way that I showed you guys, okay? And you'll be able to do that very nicely. Okay, cool. So we can basically add another track here, and we can bring the corrected up. Actually, this is what we could do. All right, with all that we've done, we could nest it. Okay, we could nest everything we did, and yep, and we could say graded. All right, and we have a graded copy of, oh no, I don't want to do that yet. First, I'm going to make a copy of the raw with the noise and noise reduction, and then the graded. I can now nest that to graded. Okay, so now I have both, and all I can do is I can say I want this to be right here, and I can use something like a slide. Actually, this is what I'm gonna do to have it very nicely. I can decide to make some cuts. Okay, I can decide to make some cuts, and we can do something like this. Then what I could do is I could use my slide, okay, and we can create those effects and make wider. All right, make longer, and now we'll have something like this. You guys see that? And of course you could work on the width and make it bigger if you needed to, like something like a 5, and it'll be something big like that. Okay, if you don't want it, you could pick a 0, and then for the color you can pick a white. Okay, and then call it a day. You guys see that? And if you want it to be a bit more longer, you can even make longer. Totally up to you. Okay, and if that is good for you, you could even let me get closer. Okay, you can even nest it again and just say master or whatever. Okay, and then what you could do, you could change the speed to something like something like 60, and now it will go a bit slower. Okay, you guys see that? Cool. So that's not graded to color graded. Okay, All right, very good. Let's take one more look at the full thing. Great. All right, so that will do it for this lesson. This is the lesson 1. It's a bit longer, but it's worth it. It's worth it. Okay. All right, good. So in lesson 2, we are going to do the same process but faster, because now you know the system. So I'll come in lesson 2. All these are already going to be done as far as the layers go, and we are just going to get to work. I've downloaded a couple, and I also shoot a couple of my FX3, and so we'll keep this going, okay? And my goal is to make sure that you feel confident at the end of the day, okay? And then if you don't use LUTs, you can still achieve these same results, but this video is long, so I don't want to do that. I'll do that in some of the future lessons, all right? But this is session 1. In session 2, we are going to take another clip and we are going to work on it. And with those, I will kind of be mixing the workflow. So you see, it's not going to be limited to really just the best LUT. It's really going to be, if you use a LUT, what adjustments are you making? If you don't use a LUT, what approach are you using, and that kind of thing, all right? And all of those will be great results, okay? Alrighty, well, I hope you guys had fun. Once again, this is a new series that I'm bringing your way, okay, that I have entitled Color Grading Made Easy, Beginner's Guide, okay? And I hope you guys had fun with this. I hope I'll see you again in the next lesson. All right, you guys remain blessed, and once again, thanks for joining. Stein with L4C Multimedia. Remain blessed. All right. Bye-bye. And please make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying.